We're signing players left. We're signing players right. We're signing so many players that it's getting to the point where we're complaining about them, sending DMs to people about them, to the players themselves about them. People are losing their minds. But are they right to? We're going to discuss that a little bit more in today's episode 600 of the Arsenal Transfer Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal Transfer Show. Joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in, for joining me for what is indeed episode 600 of this indeed series. This series that has been the lifeblood of the show, that has been the bedrock of many mornings, and the reason why, of course, this channel and community has grown to what it is today. Thank you so much, all of you that are listening, tuning in, and always dropping a like, listening perhaps on catch-up, on audio platforms, of course, wherever you happen to be around the world. This global community never fails to amaze me. Thank you so much for all that you do in supporting this. Without this channel, I don't know where I'd be. I really, really don't. So thank you, everybody, for listening and for tuning in and making my mornings that much easier to get out of bed for. So, yes, it's been quite the journey to here. And here's to the next 100, I guess. We're closing in on 700 next, but we're more than halfway. We'll have a halfway to 1,000 Arsenal transfer shows. Obviously, we've done more than 1,000 episodes, considering the Arsenal news show, of course, as well as run alongside this and is well into the, 400s, 500s, I'm not sure. But, yeah, so quite the milestone. But thank you to everyone that's joined in and listened and made this what it is. Good morning to you all joining us live in the chat box. Very much appreciate you all being here, particularly today. Errol, good morning to you, to Trader Mike. In terms of the engineer, we hope so. I'm hoping that I'm coming to you clearly, crisply. We did hear that apparently there have been some issues in the local area. So that could have explained why we'd got a couple of dips and drops and why the internet connection had dipped out a little bit. So it might not be a me issue. It could be an area issue, in which case that's a bit annoying because I can't fix that. But hopefully that'll be fixed in more general terms in the long term. But we are wired. We are Ethernetted up, if that's a phrase. So I'm hoping it's going to be fine. Cameron says, I don't like this title, Tom. Well, we're going to talk about that because people are indeed losing their minds. Rob, good morning to you. To Mike, good morning. To Clincy and Paul, good morning to Darbas and to Barney and Morgie. Good morning to Jamil and Glenn. To Sean and Brian and Victor and Roy. Good morning to you all. Thank you so much, everybody else, indeed, for tuning in as well. You are all greatly appreciated for listening and for your listenership over the last however many seasons it has been to reaching this point. Absolutely mental. Right, let's and yes, new Arsenal shirt. Finally did get my hands on it. Of course, it comes with this, man. You can see. Zooby dooby doo. So yeah, that's a thing. That's a new thing, and it's nice. I have, in terms of like Arsenal home kits, I've been pretty off Arsenal home kits for a little bit, and I like this one. This one's nice. Very, very nice indeed. Right, let's jump into today's stories, shall we? Arsenal's players have indeed now returned for pre-season. We're getting much, much closer to the start of a brand new campaign. The wait is almost over. We have less now than a month, I believe, until Arsenal kick off. Just over a month, until they kick off their Premier League campaign at Old Trafford. They've got 5 matches between now and then. In just 13 days' time, they'll be taking on AC Milan in Singapore. They'll be then facing Newcastle in the same ground a few days later, before then going to Hong Kong to play Tottenham Hotspur on the 31st of July. On August 6th, they take on Villarreal, and then on August 9th, they host Athletic Club. So still plenty of games to play, plenty of matches to come. But yeah, we've got just over a month until the Premier League starts all over again. And we have this crazy, crazy run of talking about games over and over and over and over again and again, because we just love this merry-go-round of this crazy, crazy sport. But you can see there Martin Zubimendi being welcomed by Mikel Arteta into Arsenal's training ground for one of his first, if not his first, proper session. There's a number of pictures released across social platforms. You'll see them. You can see Kai Havertz still very much the tank that he has turned into over the course of his injury. Excited to see what he can do next season. But a lot of players, of course, returning to action. Some of the players were spotted at Wimbledon, including Jurriën Timber. We hope that he'll be back from his injury as soon as possible. Gabriel Magalhaes as well, another one. So, yeah, that's another excited aspect of pre-season to come too. Moving into transfers, though, and Rodrygo was benched again and for what could be the final time as PSG embarrassed Real Madrid 4-0, knocking them out of the semi-finals of the Club World Cup, where PSG will now go on to see if they can become not just European champions, but world champions by beating Chelsea in the final. Chelsea, of course, had a very easy run when it ran all the way through to the final. And PSG have done it the hard way, knocking out Bayern Munich, knocking out Real Madrid. And now they're going to aim to knock out a team who you'd have to say, after knocking out those two sides, they will be expected to beat in the final. But yes, it's certainly a very, very interesting one that Rodrygo continues to be left out of the team. Fabrizio Romano reported yesterday that talks will be held, of course, following the tournament to decide and discuss the Brazilians' future. Arsenal are there. Arsenal are ready. Arsenal are prepared and have held discussions with the players' side already. Whether or not they need an outgoing sale to initiate the potential chase of Rodrygo remains to be seen. But Rodrygo is a player that the club do highly appreciate. And if indeed he was to become available in the market, you can imagine that they would be in a position, potentially, we would hope, to move. But Rodrygo could be up for sale. It is expected to be a 90 million euro price tag. That's just under 80 million pounds. Quite the fee, of course, but certainly a fee that Arsenal are going to, I think, have to sell to be able to move in for the player. Viktor Gyokeres. There were reports in Portugal yesterday morning after we finished the 8 a.m. show that the deal had supposedly stalled, that Arsenal's executives had left Portugal without having reached an official agreement. And there's suggestions that 5 million euros is what separates the two sides over a potential deal. It sent the fan base, you will be unsurprised to learn, into a bit of a meltdown. And concerns, of course, over whether this deal will be done. Gyökeres is not intending to return to training. He only wants to move to Arsenal, and he is doing everything he can to make that deal happen. From an Arsenal point of view, they want a 65 million euro plus 50 million euros in add-ons to make it 80 million euros, of course, deal, whereas Sporting wants 70 million euros up front and 10 million euros in add-ons. At this point, when a deal is at this stage and there is this little difference between the two clubs, it's unlikely that this collapses. And I would still sit here confident that this is a deal that will eventually happen. And it will, when those two clubs have got to this point where the players desperate for the move and that the two clubs have agreed on the overall price, but of course are now trying to come to an agreement about the structure of that deal, you would hope that we would get a resolution between the two sides. It may mean that Arsenal end up having to stump up a little bit more at the beginning. We have to wait and see what goes on. And just don't panic yet. Like, I know that the desperation for news every single day and the constant refreshing of your social feeds breeds this mentality of what on earth is happening. Please let this be good news today. But just chill, please. And I think that message is going to be very relevant for the story we're just about to talk about, of course, as well, because as confirmed by Fabrizio Romano yesterday, Arsenal made their first official offer for Noni Madueke, a bid that is of an unknown initial amount, but that with add-ons reaches £50 million. We don't know what the initial fee or figure is right now of that first bid, but we know that with add-ons included, it all summarizes to be 50 million. Now, this was knocked back initially by Chelsea. They want a slightly higher initial fee, but there is a sense that these two clubs will come to an agreement over the price tag in the end, and that Noni Madueke is expected to be a brand new Arsenal player this summer. I put a tweet out yesterday, and I'll tell you what that tweet was, and it's where I currently stand and will stand right now on this. I said, for me, the Noni Madueke signing, in terms of trying to make sense of it, will not be accurately possible to conclude until we see the rest of the summer business. And I've been consistent in my feeling about Madueke. I think he's a decent player that will solve a problem that we've had for a long, long time, which is having a competent number 2 to Bukayo Saka. A problem that we've known for ages is an issue. A problem that on this channel, we've had plenty of comments saying, how long has it been for us to finally get a good, decent player to be the number 2 to Saka? It does solve that problem. The issue is that we have so many necessities in this window that if Madueke stops us from signing one of those other priorities, this is not a good decision by Arsenal. If it stops us getting Eze, which we are told it won't. We're told that this is a separate deal from that. And I'm genuinely shocked that £50 million is what this is costing. You know, I've said it. Gooner Legend says, you said, wait and see, it won't be 50 million. I'm shocked, genuinely shocked that £50 million is the price tag. Genuinely, utterly surprised how high we've gone in from the start, that it wasn't even like a 40 or a 45 and build up. Genuinely, I am shocked by the price, because I don't think Noni Madueke is, for me, worth £50 million. I just don't feel that way. This is, for me, one of the most baffling transfer decisions since starting the Arsenal transfer show 600 episodes ago. This, to me, is one of the most baffling. More baffling to me than the Sterling loan deal. Way more baffling than the Kai Havertz deal, because I actually thought there was some sense to that. I'm just trying to not jump off the ledge right now into the meltdown until I see what else happens. I'm trying to see what else we do before this happens. Now, the market price for Madueke, I understand why he's going to cost that amount of money. I'm not silly to that idea. I'm not saying that I don't think Chelsea should be asking this amount of money. When you're seeing Alanga go for 55 million, when you're seeing Kudus go for 55 million, of course Chelsea are going to ask for this amount of money. Of course they are. Naturally. When Mbeumo is going for well over 60 million, of course Chelsea are going to have to demand this amount of money. So I can see why they are. I just can't see why Arsenal are paying it. And for me, the biggest problem that I've got is that if this does stop other deals, I'm struggling. Because £50 million, if we think about Rodrygo potentially costing about just under £80 million, if you're telling me that we can't go and get Rodrygo later on in the window, assuming, of course, that he's up for joining Arsenal, and there weren't discussions where he turned around and said that Arsenal aren't a club that he wants to join, but we've not heard anything to either side of that story yet. But if we're in this position where this deal stops us from signing an Eze or a Rodrygo or a striker, that is where I'm going to be critical of the club's actions of this deal. Now, after I've said that, and I sincerely hope that when I say those of you, that this doesn't actually mean any of you that are listening, but those of you that have sent Noni Madueke abusive DMs are a disgrace and are disgusting and are not Arsenal supporters by any stretch of the imagination. It's amazing to me that people have not learned from the Aaron Ramsdale scenario. It's not amazing to me, to be fair. It's not amazing to me at all in any way. What is amazing to me is that how many years later the abuse can be sent so frivolously and without consequence to an individual who doesn't deserve it, that there can be absolutely no consequence to those actions. Those of you that I've seen people with faceless, anonymous, cowardly social media accounts without their names on, with a picture of a player that they've probably abused themselves at some point on social media or to their friends and family, have posted, I've done my part, I've done my bit, I've tried to stop Arsenal, or they've put a hashtag of no to Madueke. Like, how old are people? Really? Genuinely? How old are you? Grow up. If you don't want a player, that's fine. And you can express that you don't want a player by putting out, an explanation that I don't want this player because XYZ. But starting up a hashtag or worse than that, sending abuse to a player who's, by the way, if you were in Madueke's position, if you were in his position, and you're obviously at Chelsea right now, and I personally feel a player of decent quality who's got talent, I genuinely feel is being wasted there. I don't think he's a bad player. I think he's a decent player who has potential, but I have question marks over what he's costing, and I have question marks over what it will do for the rest of Arsenal's summer business and how it, generates the possibility of them signing other players when I think we've got greater priorities elsewhere. But if you were Madueke with Arsenal, a club that are far better than Chelsea right now, in a much better position of competing for the top honours, and you got the chance to come into a team to get minutes, play under a manager that has a consistent track record of improving our forward players and getting good results from all of our players, to be fair. Hence why we have found ourselves breaking records for goal scoring and number of wins we've had in seasons, etc., and so on. Then he would jump at the chance and is jumping at the chance. And I don't think there's any amount of messages, and if he's turned off his social media, I wouldn't blame him. But the fact of the matter is that there is a disgusting, shameful, disgraceful section of our fan base that embarrass us far more than the actions of or how a player plays on the pitch. It's just embarrassing to be an Arsenal fan. It's embarrassing to be an Arsenal fan based upon the actions of some of our fan base, of what their actions are on social media. It's embarrassing. I genuinely, it's just soul destroying at points to see what I see posted on my social feed. I don't want to see it, but unfortunately, X is a cesspool that feeds you through the algorithm, because you see one tweet and you're like, oh, what's this? You click on it, just have a look and see the replies, and then all of a sudden Twitter's like, I'm going to feed you this. I'm going to force feed you more and more and more of this bilge and bile and disgusting human hatred of another person over the fact that just because their football club might be buying them. Honestly, be better. Just take a long, hard look at yourselves. You absolute losers. Please, for the love of all that is good, please take a long, hard look at yourselves and think of what you're doing, because it's just so embarrassing to be an Arsenal fan with people that exist like that in the fan base. Way, way, way too embarrassing to be part of this fan base when people like that exist. So thankfully there was an account yesterday I noticed that did get suspended, which is a rarity on social media these days. Obviously, the amount of people that reported the account, I'm not going to say who it was, but for me, no, it's just some of the things that I've seen are just disgusting, absolutely disgusting. But I did mention Eberechi Eze, and as I mentioned before, the suggestions are that Eberechi Eze, it's not believed to be a deal that will be affected by Arsenal's pursuit of Madueke. It's not at all. So that's the hope, of course. That is the hope, that Arsenal, despite moving for that player, is the hope is that they can still move for Eze despite moving for Eberechi Eze. That's the hope that we have in that way. But that's all the stories. So we're going to go to part 2 now. Your questions and some of your thoughts and some of your feelings about this. As I said before, if you're not respectful, if you can't put across an opinion in a respectful way, this isn't to say that you can't say you don't want a player. That's fine. That's called an opinion put across in a fine way. I'm very skeptical of this transfer. But if you can't do that, then please leave, because I have no interest in entertaining you at all. Well, let's go to part 2. Your questions and more right after this. Right, this is part 2 of today's show, where we're going to be tackling, of course, some of your questions, some of your thoughts and feelings and more. So if indeed you've got a feeling, you've got an opinion, you've got a thought about this, you've got a question you'd like to ask, now is the time to put them into the chat box. Thank you so much for the kind super chats that are being said. AJ says, Tom, let's be serious. The constant obsession with Chelsea players is getting annoying. If Arteta signs Noni Madueke at the expense of an Eze or a Gyökeres or a Rodrygo, the fans would turn on him, including me. I have seen a lot of people suggest that if Arsenal signed, say, Gyökeres and Eze, but add Madueke instead of Rodrygo, that it would make them turn on Arteta. That's silly, for the record. Like, if this point in time you're of a mindset of, I don't really want the manager to go. I think he's doing a decent job. I think right now he deserves to be in his position. But the signing of Madueke, just the signing, makes you change your mind on the manager. That's weird. Like, I get it if you're already critical of Arteta. I get it if you're already Arteta, you're not wanting him at the club, and that's fine. You're entitled to that opinion. If you don't want Arteta at the club anymore, that's fine. And this is only adding another string to that bow for you, whatever. But if you're of a mindset of, I like Arteta, at the moment I would describe myself as somebody that wants Arteta to continue in the role, and this signing is what changes your mind. That's so weird to me. That's so weird to me. Because not only have you not even seen what he's capable of doing, but obviously you've watched a window so far where they've signed a top defensive midfielder, a Premier League experienced number 2, obviously the backup goalkeeper. The expectation is a Viktor Gyokeres deal being done. The expectation is that this deal from Noni Madueke is not going to affect Eze. That this window could still, despite even the signing of Noni Madueke, this window could still end up being one of, if not the best transfer window ever. But the signing of Madueke is what's going to make you change your mind about the manager. I find that so strange. I find that really, really strange. So, but that's just my view on it. Let's go to L, who says, I'm not going to put that because he's putting in some instructions on your keyboard. So I don't know why I would ever read out a super chat that is of that nature. So not going to read that out. Nice try, though. And Daniel says, question, who's been a member now for 58 months on the channel. Incredible support. How likely is it that we sign Gyökeres, Madueke, Eze, and Rodrygo? Maybe it only happens if Martinelli and Trossard. I don't think it needs and. I think for that to happen, Trossard or Martinelli would need to leave. That's my sense and feeling. For us to sign those 4 players, I think one of Martinelli or Trossard would have to leave. So if the window ends up being Kepa, I'm going from back to front, Kepa, Mosquera, Norgard, Zubamendi, Madueke, Eze, Rodrygo, Gyökeres, 8 players. There's no doubt in my mind that's the best transfer window Arsenal have ever had, period. Ever. I don't know a window that's better than that. I couldn't name you one that is better than that window. If you take away Rodrygo from that and you go down to 7 players, I still think there's an argument there, but obviously it's less. I think there's a debate. There's a debate compared to, say, 2023. There's a debate compared to, say, 1997. There's a debate compared to 1998. There's a debate compared to, some of those. And, I know people say, the season we signed Thierry Henry. Thierry Henry was really one of, if not, I think 2 of the signings we made that window, became an amazing player. But as of this moment right now, I thought we'd sign 5 or 6 this summer. And Arsenal look to be proving me wrong. We might get 7. In a crazy world, if one of the wingers goes, we might get 8. That's nuts. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on that. Dex says, Tom being paid, spelt P-A-Y-E-D, by the club, so has agenda. I proper, yes, men. It's really hard to be offended by your trolling comments when basic English and spelling kind of falls away. But, fair play to you. Stephen says, I feel the reality is most fans don't want Madueke at the club, but this looks like it's going to happen. So we have to get behind the player and the team. And this player could suffer with confidence, indeed. We want Arsenal to succeed. We'll have opinions about who they sign. But as soon as Madueke pulls on the red and white of Arsenal, you've got my backing. I sincerely hope that you succeed and prove me and a lot of other people wrong. And I hope that you use that as fuel to do so. I really, really do hope that you use it as some kind of fuel to propel you forwards and succeed and prove people wrong. And I hope that the Emirates crowd, and I'm sure they will if Noni Madueke was, of course, to run out on the field, will be cheering his name. AJ says, Tom, that's because he's becoming a repeat offender. Well, this repeat offending of transfers has still elevated Arsenal, of course, to where they are as a club now as opposed to where they were 6-7 years ago. SW says, if we sign 7, it'll be the excuse that they need time to gel, which brings... No, there's no excuses this window. This is... Andrea Berta has not got a free hit summer, and he's not delivering a free hit summer. This summer, these changes is all about winning. You will not hear me sitting here and saying that a reason why we're not good enough is because we've signed too many players. We've needed this injection of quality. You can't sit there and say, we need these many signings, we need this to happen, and then go, oh, they need time to gel. No, you don't sign 26-year-olds, 27-year-olds, 25-year-olds, 26-year-olds, and then say they need time to gel. This is a window where you're signing players to win trophies, and that's what needs to happen. Anthony says, Tom, we are opening up ourselves to scrutiny here. How can we haggling over 5 million euros, but willing to spend 50 million plus on Noni? Well, we haven't bid 50 million plus. Anthony, unfortunately, you are very consistently one of those that falls into the trap of misinterpreting the reality of what happens. That's just the reality of what, from the consistency of the comments that come in. Because we've not bid over £50 million for Noni Madueke. Chelsea's asking price is above £50 million for Noni Madueke. But Arsenal's bid at the moment is below £50 million with add-ons that reach 50 million, and that Chelsea want that. Now, if they were to go in and spend over 50 million, that then changes it. But we've not had an indication at this point that that's going to happen. We may get that indication, but at this point we haven't. The feeling is that Arsenal's initial bid that is 50 million that includes add-ons, more of that upfront fee needs, of course, to reach closer to the 50, if not be 50. Add-ons, of course, as I'm regularly pointed out with the Ramsdale situation, whenever I point out Arsenal selling Ramsdale all in for 25, all I get back from people is, it wasn't 25, it included add-ons. Southampton went down, despite the fact if he leaves, they'll make that back in the sell-on clause. But here it's like, oh, add-ons, they're willing to pay well over 50 million. You see the context changes depending upon the argument. Also, the 5 million euros situation with Gyökeres, it's not like 5 million euros is the difference here in terms of it's just 5 million euros. We're talking about a 5 million euros at a figure that is already at 65 million euros with 50 million in add-ons. That 5 million euros is going on top of that. It's not like you're signing a player for 5 million euros. That 5 million euro difference is a figure that's already 65 million euros. And if we want Arsenal to do all of the business that we want them to see, that's why we haggle on the price. That's why we negotiate better deals for those players. So we are in a position to be more capable, more flexible of doing more deals to help us in this window, to sign the players that we all want to see signed. So to clarify on this, so far, Arsenal haven't shown a willingness to pay over £50 million. They have bid under £50 million and then added add-ons to make it a bid in total of that amount, but they've not committed to that. An improved bid could go over that, but again, it could be inclusive of those add-ons. And then secondly, when it comes to the Gyökeres deal, you are doing a deal with a club at a 70 million euro plus 10, is that what the asking price is, where you're currently offering 65 million euros plus 15. So we've actually offered the 80. It's just the structuring of how that 80 million euros comes about. And Arsenal want to do the best possible deal for a number of reasons. One, so they can obviously spend more on other players. Two, so they don't just give in to a club's demands and pay what they want, so that it doesn't weaken their negotiating position in other deals for other players. And thirdly, of course, if you just keep paying what clubs want, you will restrict yourself in the long term. And those long-term impacts will be damaging. And that's what's key. And says, how can you sleep at night trying to dress up a piss-poor side? And this is the thing, like, people don't listen to what you say. I'm so skeptical of the Madueke deal. I struggle to make sense of it. But people are so blinded by the fact that they view characters, people, journalists, individuals online as being in a set group. Either you're in or you're out, or you're on this side of the fence or the other. That even though I've sat here and said, I can't make sense of this deal, I'm really skeptical about it. I don't think it makes sense in the context of what we're doing right now. It's one of the most baffling deals we've done forever. Anthony pops in the chat box and says, is it Anthony? Might have been someone else, to be fair. I might be being unfair. Yeah, it was a different Anthony. Says, you're trying to dress this up. What more can I do? I think Harry had it the other day. Harry had a comment to him saying, you wanted Benjamin Sesko. How do you feel about us getting Gyökeres? Harry's been consistent that he wants Gyökeres. Harry's been so consistent about the fact that he wants Gyökeres over Sesko. But because people put us into buckets and different groups and just assume that we are defensive of everything the club does, even when we are critical, even when we're critical and criticize what the club does or how the club acts or the decisions they make or the decisions Arteta makes, people are just blind to it. Absolutely blind to it. I don't get the Madueke deal. If it was up to me, it wouldn't be happening. And if they do it and don't end up signing the other players, I think it's really, really, really silly. But people won't hear that because they've put me and Harry and others into boxes and they don't care. So please listen before leaving really silly and accurate comments in the chat box. Charlie says, if Madueke wasn't a Chelsea player, people would be raving. I don't know if they'd be raving, but I do think that the sentiment would be different. I definitely think that's a fair point, Charlie. I think that if the fact that Noni Madueke is a Chelsea player, without a doubt, affects how people see that deal. But I still think people are well within their rights to be skeptical, doubtful, critical of this signing. Because I think there are greater needs before this deal, and we are spending potentially a lot of money on this deal. Elliot, who's been a member with us now for 35 months, says, Tom, can we fend off competition for Rodrygo? Depends on our financial freedom. Depends on who else comes in for him. Depends what type of players are still at the club. If we've already got Martinelli and Trossard, can we sell Rodrygo that project? There's a lot of ifs. There's a lot of depends. Chris says, add on re-signing Gabriel, Mars Lewis Skelly, potentially Waneri, Saliba and Saka. Would that ever be beaten in terms of a summer? Yeah, it's not just the deals that we potentially would be doing this summer. It's obviously the players that we would potentially be renewing to new contracts. Already done Gabriel and Lewis Skelly, and talks are progressing for Saliba, Saka and Waneri too. It's a really good point. Benny says, I can't spell so good either. It's only July. Aditya, thank you so much for the kind donation. So 45 million plus 5 million add-ons is okay. All good. Can we stop correcting on trivia details and address the real issue? Again, I don't think, Aditya, you've listened to what I've just said. I try. But thank you for the donation to desperately say that, even though it's wrong. Creflo, I think, says, not a question, but I remember online fans being outraged over the David Raya signing, and he proved all those doubters wrong. Let's give Noni a chance. Baron says, hi, Tom. You would swear that the window shuts on Friday. I have a feeling Trossard is on his way out. That would open up the chance for a left-wing signing. Daniel says, don't worry, Tom. Arsenal is no one's business. We spend as much as we want. We spend as much as we hope that we can. That is for sure. Andrew says, keep that energy on TalkSport when you It's honestly, it's baffling. The mental gymnastics some people do is crazy. I couldn't be more consistent across as many different type of platforms as I'm on. I say what I say here. I say it in the articles. I say it on different platforms. I'm as consistent as they come, mate. It's as simple as that. Burr says, isn't it cheap move by Arsenal going for the player because of the payment structure Chelsea provides instead of buying real talent, which will cost more up front? We don't know the specific details of the breakdown of the bid. All we know, it was 50 million that was inclusive of add-ons. We don't know. Kevin says, Ornstein said all along the club are looking to bring in 3 attackers, likely to be Gyökeres, Eze, and Madueke, but a 4th to happen would obviously need a player to leave. And that's absolutely fair. David said this at the start of the window. Arsenal wanted 3 attacking options, Gyökeres, Eze, and Madueke. Dream scenario, they can add Rodrygo on top of that as well. Lloyd says, Tom, has Norgard been announced yet? No, but I would expect that very, very, very soon. Ruben says, hi, Tom. I don't know about you, but it just feels like someone's gotten something wrong. I can't help but think there's some information that we're missing. And I'm kind of where you're at, Ruben. Trying to make sense of this deal is a real challenge, and I'm failing so far. The only explanation I've got for this is that the absence of Bukayo Saka last summer was felt so strongly that they have pinpointed players that they feel as though are the best options to be a Saka number 2. And they feel Madueke is the best option. I do think some people are overplaying how bad Madueke is. I had people tweeting me saying it would be better to keep Nelson. I think that's ridiculous. But trying to find other options. I had people suggesting like Simon Adingra, of course, as well as a potential replacement instead, to be someone that comes in and plays. But he's a left winger, not a right winger for starters. He didn't have the best of seasons last year with Brighton. There was a lot of potential about him, but again, £22 million. He's 23 years of age. He's going to Sunderland. He scored 2 goals and got 2 assists last season. I get that he's only 22 million quid, but A, he's a left winger. B, he's not fulfilling his potential. C, he's going to Sunderland. I think that should be pretty telling as well. He's not. I don't think he's better than what Madueke has been in the last 18 to 24 months. Personally, I don't think so. But again, we're pulling straws here at the moment. It's really genuinely not that. It's not easy to discuss. Bob says it's just a shame that the striker and left winger signing didn't come first. Again, though, Bob, it's not like we can expect the club, right, to act in this way. So what people expect the club to do is have a list of priorities, which, by the way, they do. But some people expect, like, the idea that we would go down the lists in terms of priority. So that, say, this summer, without question, it would be striker, defensive midfielder, because both of ours have gone. So we absolutely had to go and get a defensive midfielder. Second attacking signing, second defensive midfielder, backup goalkeeper, another defender for depth, and then, if we're really lucky, another attacking player. There were necessities for this window, and there are bonuses for this window. But if we had a priority, if we went like, we're going to do the striker first, so we're going to spend these months chasing Šeško, our Leipzig aren't going to move, so then we're going to move for Gyökeres instead, hopefully get done. Maybe he would be done by the start of July or a week into July instead, because we put all of our efforts in just that one signing. Then we try and do the defensive midfielder. Obviously, Zubimendi's been done for quite a while, so thankfully that's already there. But say then you go on to the next player. Did we say that was the wide player? Potentially a Madueke, potentially a Rodrygo. Well, Rodrygo's at the Club World Cup. He's not going to leave Real Madrid until at least midway through July, potentially longer, because he has to hold talks with Real Madrid first. And of course, he's a player that I think a number of clubs will come in for. So it's even more difficult to try and do that deal. But say we spend time on the Rodrygo deal, but it takes until the end of July, maybe start of August to get that deal done, maybe even longer. And at that point, you've still got to do the backup keeper. You've still got to do the defender. You've still got to do the backup defensive midfielder. You've still got to do these other signings. So that's why we don't work in that way. Is it a shame? Yes, because I think it would have appeased a lot of people and the mood would be different by now. But that's not how transfer windows work. Andrea Berta is also bringing in a very different approach to transfers. He's taken, as I've said and have been talking to you about for months, a holistic approach to how Arsenal are doing deals. He's talking to multiple profiles of multiple positions for those same positions, positioning Arsenal into a strong way where that, say, when the Šeško situation proves to be inaccessible, that they can quickly pivot to Gyökeres, another very viable centre-forward option. We've got a number of forward players that we have appreciated, and I'm sure there was work that went on behind the scenes before the Norgard stuff happened as well to find a replacement for Jorginho. So that's where we're at, is that this idea that you just do everything in order of priority, that's not how transfer windows can work. Because if you were to work in that way, you'd have no time at the end of the window to do a lot of the other business that also needs to be done. You do the deals in order based upon what deals you can do at those specific times. Sometimes you have to take a couple of risks, and that might mean not signing a player to wait and see if an opportunity arises later in the window. We certainly did that in 2024, and that risk didn't pay off. And as a result, we had a very, very poor window with just 2 permanent fixtures coming in Calafiori and Marino, and we moaned about that window to the ends of the earth. It arguably was a window that cost us silverware last season. The January window, even worse. We waited until right at the end of that window to really make a play for a centre forward, and by that point, there wasn't time to really negotiate. And even in that sense, Villa weren't budging on that asking price that was too high for Watkins. And I'm glad that we didn't sign Watkins personally. I think it would have been the wrong decision. But, oh, look at that. Another criticism of Arsenal going for a player that I didn't want. Amazing. I can do it. But when it comes to this idea that we take big risks in this window after doing it last window and it really costing us, I just can't get on board with that. So yeah, that's kind of the explanation around. And I'm not saying, by the way, the person who left that comment, whose the name has sadly escaped me now, was being critical there. It was just this idea about doing signings in order of priority. It's very difficult. Kenneth says, you find any reason to defend the club? Speak your truth, brother. Stop with the toxic positivity. It's honest. I can only assume these people are deaf. Genuine. I can only assume these people are deaf. But, we do block trolls here. So see you later, Kenneth. On with Ash, who says, I don't mind Noni. He's good. But I don't know why all the people are crying from the Arsenal fans when Noni starts cooking. You'll see them all singing his name, just like they started doing with Kai Havertz. Carey says, we need an improvement, Tom, in our owners. Sadly, that's my truth after following the club my whole life. I love Arteta and our team. Hopefully, we get in a good place by the end of the window. Need game changers. I mean, if we're pointing fingers at the ownership, right? Arsenal this summer could be on for a record spend in terms of spending. And the last programme of the season had Josh Kroenke saying, we will invest. And they are. Let's not lie. They are investing. It's not up to them who we sign. It's not up to Josh Kroenke who the players are we sign. That's down to Berta and Arteta and the recruitment team, Tim Lewis, Richard Garlick, James King. They're all these people, James Ellis, all involved in these decisions. The owners have... you can't say that we've not been backed this window. That's what my argument was at the beginning of the window. I wanted to get to the end of the window and be in a position where Mikel Arteta had no excuses. None. Zero. Squat. I wanted this team to be in a position where if things don't go well for Arsenal, the only person you can point at is the manager. That's the position that I want to be in as an Arsenal fan at the end of this window, is that come May next year, if we have won nothing, I want the only reason that we haven't won anything to be the manager. That's what I want to be in the position to be at. Because last summer, we couldn't do that. Because the injuries and the poor signings and the lack of backing, the poor execution of the summer window and subsequently the January window left Arteta in a position where, frankly, what he did with the players that he had was, I think, ridiculous. To finish second and get to a Champions League semi-final with how few options we had was nuts. So this summer is all about putting Arsenal and particularly Arteta into a position where we can, come May, only point at him. That's the reality of what I've wanted for this summer. That's what I want for Arsenal. Is I only want Mikel Arteta to be the person to be to blame if we don't succeed next season. That's what it should be. So that's what I hope we have. Let's carry on. There's nearly 2,500 of you listening in the chat this morning. Thank you so much to all of you being here. Thank you to the 99% of you that are listening. Really appreciate you all. Thank you. Canal says, Tom, how would you feel if we landed Madueke and with this money, Chelsea managed to land Rodrygo? I'd be fuming. Absolutely fuming, Canal. I don't think I could express how annoyed I'd be if that happened. Tris Magistus says FFP and PSR makes it also trickier. If the players aren't available, better to be patient rather than ending up like Man United. Pablo says we complain about a lack of signings and the speed of signings where players are going to fit in and the lack of cover for current players. Stop moaning. Allow Berta to do his job. I absolutely get the irony. Of course, the irony is blatant. Why are we always so slow? Why don't we spend some money? Why don't we ever have cover? Why can't we sign players to be competitors to the option so they're not comfortable? And Arsenal do that, and people moan. So I get it. But the Madueke deal in isolation, I think there is criticisms to be had for that, for sure. Leandros says, missed the show live, but people pointing at us haggling for 5 million and then bidding on Madueke are missing the point. Saving 5 million times 5 and 25 million equals another transfer. This is the point, is that the 5 million that being haggled over, and that is in itself a little bit of a kind of a deceptive term in this sense. It's on a valuation of a player that is already exceeding 65 million euros. So it changes the perspective. It's not just 5 million that's going on to the sheet. It's going to be 70 million with add-ons. And that 70 million that goes down rather than the 65 million that goes down could change the way Arsenal can operate in the market. It's just how it works. Raj says, very exciting times ahead. What happens if Madueke is a huge success? Will we be able to... No, of course they won't apologise, Raj. You might get some going, fair play to him, he's proved me wrong. But nothing can take back what some people have said. Nothing can. Nothing can take that back. Nothing can take back the abuse that has already been sent Noni Madueke's way by disgusting, soulless cretins. Nothing can take that back. Those people are, I think, ultimately probably beyond education in this sector. You know, they will always be that way inclined, comfortable with abusing people. That's what social media has bred, unfortunately, in this day and age. We have to try and take responsibility. We have to try and call it out when we see it. I don't agree with those people that say stop giving it a platform, because it just carries on. It just carries on. If you're ignorant and ignore it, that for me is not the way to approach this problem. You may not like seeing it. You may not like me talking about it, but ignoring it and pretending it's not happening is not the right course of action. It's why people have to deal with so much awfulness in this world today, because we ignore it. Too many people have ignored it for so long. Jordan says, what abuse? Are we real? Why? FFS. The abuse that's being sent directly to a footballer via his Instagram DMs. Abusive terminology. Horrible messages. That abuse, Jordan. Open your eyes. Realize what's being said. Recognize why it's wrong. And be better than you are right now. Jigsaw says, I hope he comes to Arsenal, and I want him so bad to silence the Arsenal fans and to stop crying. It's not his fault. He didn't ask to have a 50 million price tag put on him. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's mainly on Instagram, Spearman. It's mainly, and those messages I'm seeing on social media, people posting print screens of the Instagram messages they're sending saying, I've done my part. What losers? Like, what absolute losers are doing that? Kieran says he's turned off his comments on... Has he actually? Let me just double check that's real. It's important to check the facts always. Madueke. When's his most recent post? Oh, he has. Right? I can't leave a comment on that post. Comments. Yeah, comments have been limited. Oh my. What about on this one? Comments have been limited. And this one? Comments have been limited. You're disgusted. Like, genuinely, people, some of you people are horrible. Horrible people that have led a footballer to have to turn off his Instagram comments because you can't stop yourselves from sending him disgusting messages. It's not his fault. Like, what is wrong with you all? Like, seriously, genuinely, just take a second. I'm sure some of you are sitting there laughing or smiling at the fact that this is happening. Just take a step back for a second. Put yourself in his shoes, in his position. If you were that player, if you were living a dream life of being a professional footballer, you've made your way, you know, you've come through an English youth system, you've gone abroad, you've worked exceptionally hard, developed in with PSV, earned yourself a £30 million move to a Premier League club. Arsenal, a club currently competing at a higher level, have come in for you. Really excited about that move. You're not asking to be that amount of money in terms of a transfer fee. You don't decide how much you cost. You don't decide that you don't decide that you've done enough to convince Arsenal to come in for you. You're excited about the move. You go to your Instagram, probably looking to see messages from some of your friends saying, "Fair play, Noddy. Congratulations. You know, I hope you get the move. I hope so on and so forth." You turn on your Instagram and you see the fans of the club that you could be signing for doing that. Furthermore, think for a second if you're Rodrygo. Think if you're a player that a lot of you would love to see sign for Arsenal for a second. A player that you would absolutely adore to see come to the club. And they see what some, I should point out, some, it's not all of you, but some. To see what some, and when I say some, it's a significant portion. If it's got to the point where you're turning off your notifications, it's got to a serious level. And it's not just players that could join Arsenal, by the way. Think about what happened with Kai Havertz and his other half and what happened there. That was only last season. Think about what happened with Declan Rice. Spontaneous, disgusting comments towards his partner. I did a whole dedicated show on that moment. You can still watch it on the channel. This is an ongoing issue. It's an ongoing problem within our fan base. And it needs calling out. It needs platforms to do more. It needs social media to do more. It needs action. Social media, in my opinion, needs to have consequences in a way in which you can identify the people based upon the abuse that they have sent online. That needs to be just an unquestionable necessity. But unfortunately, it is. And I agree with AFC DMB who says it's not an Arsenal issue, it's an internet issue. I get that. You know, it's not just us. It's not just our people within our fan base. It's not just people within the Arsenal fan base at all. It is a broad issue. But if that makes you feel better, it shouldn't. It shouldn't make you feel better because it's still an issue that we have. It's still an issue in our fan base. And that should bother you. It should bother you that you're sharing your club with some horrible, horrible people out there. It really, really, really should bother you. So if you see it, report it. If you see it, raise it. If you see it, do something about it. It might be very limited in what you can do, but do it. If you're in the stadium, and it's rarer to see in the ground, but it does happen, sadly, there are processes in place. If you see discrimination, abuse, so on and so forth, there are ways in which you can play your part. And I know it's tough, especially in person. You have to be brave to do it in person. You can do it anonymously. You can text. I think it's foul. Let me get you the information if you need to do it. In the stadium, if you happen to be in the Emirates Stadium, you can text foul plus the row and seat number for that information. So yes, discriminatory chanting and antisocial behaviour is offensive to all fans and not tolerated at the Emirates. You can text foul to 67777 together with a description of the incident, the seat number and row as best of your ability to do so, and that's how you can report it in the stadium. So yeah, I knew this is where today's abuse was going to go. I knew where the conversation was going to lead to in terms of the abuse we were talking about. I knew that was going to happen because this is the topic of today. Talking about Madueke. but it's just, it's so horrible. Like being an Arsenal fan at the moment, it's been a really tough period. You know, being an Arsenal fan, and this situation has made things just even worse. Just seeing messages sent to a potential signing of Arsenal, whether you want him or not. You know, as I said before, on a footballing level, on a footballing situation, I am really skeptical of this deal. I'm somewhat baffled by this deal. I really am. But what's worse, you know, far worse than any transfer is how some of the people in this fan base act. It's as simple as that. Simple as that. Sorry that this has taken up so much time, and I would have made light about some of the comments by doing our bingo cards, and they've been sent in, by the way. We'll do more about that probably tomorrow. It also sucks that the 600th episode of this show has been taken up majority by talking about the horrible people that exist within our fan base. But if anything, it shows the consistency of where we are, where this channel is, what we stand for, what we don't stand for, what we intend to talk about very seriously. In some ways, I'm proud of that. In some ways, I'm gutted about that. And I hope that if this whole conversation has made just one person who sent a horrible message step back and think, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Yeah, fair enough. I got carried away. I got caught up in the moment. And if you genuinely hold your hands up and say, sorry, I struggle with seeing it happening. But if it's changed the way one person has acted and it makes them act differently in the future, it's so worth it. So worth it. So that's me. That's today's show. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for 600 episodes. I really appreciate you all tuning in and listening. You all greatly appreciated. Really, genuinely, you all are. Even the ones that disagree. Genuinely, you all appreciate it for listening and tuning in. It's been a wild ride, and it's not stopping. It's still going. And if anything, we are growing every single day. More people listen, more people tune in. It's not this serious usually. We're usually pretty chill and just talk about Arsenal. But it got serious today, and I'm glad that it did because I think it needed to. Thank you to all of you for tuning in. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy, and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.